How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Special video for you today with a special guest. We are doing a lottery mock draft, which y'all have been asking for. And to help me out, I brought on one of my good friends, Derek Parker, drafts YouTube guy, covers the Oklahoma City Thunder for Sports Illustrated Draft Digest. I believe that's right.
Yep, that's correct.
Anyways, Derek, thanks for coming on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. I've been really hammering Thunder stuff lately just because they're 37 and
Understandable.
9, best team in the league right now. So I've been pretty delving into that, but I mean this draft class has been pretty awesome. So I'm excited to chop a little NBA draft with you today.
And what's the feeling like just for you and for like the Thunder fan base? Because obviously the Thunder are in a unique position where they're a historically great team in a lot of ways and are a legitimate finals contender, but also have a lottery pick possibly and multiple first round picks. So like, are people even thinking about that? Or like what is the kind of temperature on the, current focus on the season versus like, oh, we have this to think about that most teams in our situation don't have to think about?
It's interesting because a lot of people are happy with the result. Obviously, like they're 37 and 9 again. Like
Sure.
they're a phenomenal
Sure.
basketball team.
Hard not to be. Yeah.
Right. But there's also like a decently large camp of fans that want to go trade for someone, whether it's like Cam Johnson, whoever, which is understandable. But when you're drafting guys like AJ Mitchell, Aaron Wiggins with seconds, and then you're projected to get the 8th overall pick from the 76ers, I'm like screaming to everybody. I'm like, just let them draft someone. I mean, they've nailed like
Right.
so many drafts in a row. It's like they've proven they can do this. This is not your run of the mill franchise where they could miss. There's a pretty good chance they get a good player. So I'm
Right.
under the impression they want to take players, but I mean, who knows how it's going to shake out.
Just based on Presti's history, I would guess that's correct. I mean, I certainly see both sides of that coin, right? Like they probably could benefit this year from a Cam Johnson or a Colin Sexton or John Collins or whoever. I don't know.
100%.
But do they need that guy 100%? Probably not either. Especially because, we haven't even seen this team at full strength yet. But anyways, we'll get to the Thunder when we get to their pick. Way this is going to work, this is just the draft order based on the standings, no lottery nonsense at the moment. I'm going to take the odd number picks. Derek is going to take the even number picks, and we're going to go back and forth. And if you're excited for the draft, enjoying this kind of content, like, subscribe, comments, all of that would be hugely appreciated. I will give Derek a chance to plug at the end, and of course, we'll link all of his stuff below. So go check his stuff out. If you enjoy draft content, you'll like Derek's stuff. But anyways, I will start us off. Not going to dilly-dally too much here. The Washington Wizards are taking Cooper Flag. Big shocker. And I have the shout-out Swish Theory, just their recent consensus board they released, just as like a kind of a benchmark to pull from. But Cooper Flag, I don't really think is that crazy of a selection at number one. I just want to quickly share this. Just looking at freshman box plus minus, Flag is 6th since 2008, and obviously BPM isn't everything, especially for older guys. But like most of the top guys are pretty damn good NBA players, and I think the company Flag is, in of course, while being super young, right, is really impressive. Derek, any complaints or thoughts on this one?
No, I'm going to have to agree. I think he's the full package. I think obviously we know what he is on defense. He's this multi-tooled, multi-positional guy who can do a lot of different things. And then while the offense is maybe a little bit simple, he's still in, like you said, really rare category there with some of those scores. And he's just so physically dominant and so smart and has so much feel for the game that he's good in that regard too. So no, I have no qualms. He's undoubtedly going to end up my number one prospect. So
yeah, and this is a great draft. Like there are lots of really good prospects, but I think Flag, you can even, and I would make the case that he has obvious offensive flaws, right? His ball control isn't great. His choice of angles on drives not always perfect, but because Flag has these issues and is still the best offensive player in the country right now. He's leading all players in scoring among conference play, incredibly efficient. So like I'll bet on that guy any day to refine the things. Like again, the fact that he's still obviously, he's 18 years old, has plenty of room to grow physically, as pretty much all freshmen do. And skill wise, I just think the floor is so safe and the ceiling is really that of like an MVP level guy if everything can come together. So Cooper Flag, number 1 to Washington. And I guess we should talk about the fit a little bit. I mean, Washington needs a 1A true superstar guy. I think that they have a lot of really intriguing young pieces that I don't know about you, but I like quite a bit. I'm pretty in on most of their young guys. I really like Bilal. I really like Sarr. I think Bub has been really intriguing this year. But just getting that one Cooper level guy will really change everything for them. So Cooper Flag to Washington at number 1. Derek, you are on the clock at 2 with the Utah Jazz. Any gonna go crazy here, or do who I think you're gonna do?
This is so tough for me because I like truly in my heart of hearts feel like Dylan Harper and Kasparas Jakučionis are closer than most people think, just in terms of, I mean, yeah, Dylan Harper has the stats. I don't really discount his recent stretch. I think it's injury, it's the illness, it's whatever. So I think he's still that guy we saw earlier in the year. But KJ is also doing it for a really good Illinois team. I think it's impressive for a guy like Brad Underwood to trust him so much. I think they're very obviously pretty close in some areas, despite maybe KJ doing a little less numbers-wise. The shooting is really intriguing. I prefer that a lot. So I'm between those two. I'll go Dylan Harper just because I think he was so dominant. I think he is that guy. I think he's an obvious tier 1 S-tier prospect. And then the Jazz really, really need someone like this just in terms of a final blue chip prospect that they can take into this new era if they choose to do it. You'd think at this point they would have to offload at least some of this win now talent. Maybe go get Dylan Harper, another guy to play with.
I have no clue what exactly their plan is, to be perfectly honest at this point. But they certainly do need that, just like we talked about the Wizards with that like 1A star. And I do think it's reasonable to have someone else like, I don't think it's something to scoff at if you want to say, Jakučionis, or I've seen people with, Malawash, or there's people who really like VJ Edgecombe. Like, it's a really good draft. And I think there's certainly cases to be made for other prospects at that 2 spot. But ultimately, I just think Harper's ability to create advantages as a driver, his incredible finishing, playmaking, I'm buying the pull-up jumper. He's going to be a great on-ball defender with his size. Just hard to pass on a guy like that for a team like Utah that just kind of similar to Washington, like has a lot of intriguing pieces, but they just needs that 1A guy to be your franchise superstar. And outside of Cooper Flag in this draft, I think Harper's probably the most likely candidate for that. I'm sure you'd probably, you and most people, I'm not saying it's consensus or anything, but would probably agree with it. Actually, it's definitely consensus. But cool. So, anything else you want to add on Harper to the Jazz?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd be pumped to see that fit. Obviously, I think, like I said, they could finally move into quote unquote a new era. He would be the guy to surround pieces with. I think he's really interesting. I think he's got that tier 1 potential. So yeah, no, I'm stoked with that pick.
Cool. So 3rd, New Orleans. Really interesting spot for them with their injuries. Who knows if they're actually going to end up picking this high because they are a little healthier now. But I'm going to give them Kasparas Jakučionis since you let him fall to 3, which I would have done the same. I really like Jakučionis, 1, because he's the best player on the board to me, and I just generally want to prioritize BPA talent. And like you said, he has some intriguing like lead guard potential as well. His shooting is better than Harper's, absolutely. He is a dynamic off-dribble shooter. His passing is probably better than Harper's as well. I don't think he's as good of like a driver advantage creator, and that definitely matters for playmaking. But Jakučionis is also really big. He's a great foul drawer. So even though he doesn't have the like vertical or like horizontal burst that a Dylan Harper has, he has a lot of other tricks and ways to get to the rim. And I think maybe even more so than Harper, can really thrive as like an off-ball guy because of his shooting and because of his cutting and relocation. I think that makes a lot of sense in New Orleans, especially, of course, assuming they'll continue to build around Zion, and I think Trey Murphy and him have some potential really interesting synergy too. I don't really, consider McCollum or Murray as part of like the long-term core, and Ingram, I feel like is always in trade talks. But I think theoretically Ingram and Jakučionis can work for sure. And then defensively, I think he's shown some, good stuff as an off-ball defender, especially. But I just think Jakučionis, one of the highest ceilings in this class for sure as a lead guard, and makes a lot of sense for a New Orleans team that is kind of in need of a retool. I'm not going to say full-on rebuild because they obviously are a really talented roster, but certainly in need of some of like a retooling, I think.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think the shooting is the big thing here, like you touched on. Like they've got their centrifugal piece in Zion. He plays really well off of that.
Good
And then
vocabulary.
yeah, and then he's got that kind of the playmaking. I would call it a burst right now. Like it's not fully there. It's not 100% developed, but that's something he could certainly work off. And then defensively, he's got a few things shown here and there, but they've got enough pieces that they could cover that very easily.
Right.
I
They
mean, they've
Herb,
got
they
yeah,
have
their defensive roster is pretty loaded. So yeah, I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, and I think one of New Orleans' big problems in the Zion area has consistently been like real high feel guys, both on and off the ball. Like, obviously, it was a big story last year. They had Zion play point guard for like most of the season because they don't ever have a point guard, and they have Dejounte Murray who puts up great assist numbers, but isn't like a connector or ball mover. Like he needs to be running pick and rolls, making pocket passes and stuff, and he's good at that. But I still think of DeJounte as more of like a floor raiser than someone like Yakuchonis, who I think can be a floor raiser, but also has the potential to really thrive next to other stars like Zion and Ingram and CJ or whoever they want to, or if Trey Murphy can continue to grow. Like, yeah, I just think Yakuchonis has a great blend here of not only being, to me, and I think to you as well, the best talent left on the board, but also just a really good fit in New Orleans. So anything else to add on that one before we head to your next pick?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think ahead here a little bit. This is
a
such a tough one.
I do my mock drafts for Sportskeeda, and I feel like I always struggle with the Charlotte slot unless they get like a number like a top 2 pick in the sim. Like they're a tough one. So yeah, Derek, you're on the clock. Floor is yours for Charlotte at 4.
I think the consensus would probably go Ace Bailey here, right? That's probably where most people would lean. I think VJ
Probably.
Edgecombe is really interesting as a two-way force in that backcourt or kind of a hybrid in between the middle of the roster. And then I don't even hate swings on guys like Malawach here.
Yeah.
I'm probably at the end of the day going to go with Ace Bailey.
Yeah.
Purely, maybe even purely just for the fact of how fun would it be to have LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Ace Bailey on a basketball team. I mean, that's like that's must-watch hoops on night in and night out. But then he's also got this ultimately high ceiling, like we know of. I mean, he's been phenomenal lately scoring the ball. I think most of all, my biggest concerns with Ace Bailey are obviously the playmaking, the passing, and I think he's well covered with that here in Charlotte, where you've got Brandon Miller's kind of this ancillary piece. LaMelo Ball obviously is a good passer and functions well with the ball in his hands. And then Ace Bailey can kind of just play off them, shoot his shots, get into his game, and develop from there, hopefully into a better passer than we've seen, into a even better defender than we've seen, which I think has been pretty good. So
yeah, I like this fit quite a bit. Ace wouldn't be my best player available here, but definitely in a tier with those guys. And he just makes a lot of sense as this off-ball guy next to LaMelo. Like that's just such a good fit to me.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is one of the few places I really could see Ace Bailey landing at and getting better. I struggle
which is a crazy thing to say about Charlotte.
Well, yeah, true. I really worry about his on-ball prowess at the moment. And I think they have so much of it already that I worry less about it. Now, if you were to land somewhere like Brooklyn, if D'Lo was like off the roster, like that's where things get a little dicey, and he might not end up my top guy on my board at this point either. But I mean, he's fun, obviously phenomenal player. He's treating college basketball like a Rubik's Cube right now. He like took 15 games and was like, oh, I did it. I figured out how to score on everybody. So
right. He had that like what? There was the recent Northwestern game where he scored like 37 on like 10 dribbles. It's just so awesome to watch. But yeah, I think just we generally feel similarly about Ace, who obviously has a huge range of opinions. So there's people who think he's like a top 2, maybe even number 1, though I feel like those voices have quieted as the season has gone on. And there are people who like don't think Ace is a top 10 guy. I probably would land somewhere in the middle of that. I mean, right, I consider myself an Ace centrist at least, but yeah, I do like the Charlotte fit. One, because I think Ace's best stuff is as an off-ball shooter and like a secondary creator where he can, pump fake, attack off of the dribble, sidestep threes. I think that's where his best passes come to. And the Hornets are so desperate for wings and especially wing defenders. And I think Ace Bailey's defensive ceiling is really high. So yeah, I have no complaints with this one. I've given them a bunch of different players over the time. Like, I don't know, tough one. But anything else on Ace to Charlotte?
No, don't think so.
Now we move on to Brooklyn at 5. This is
Mm.
another really tough one, where they could go in, I think, so many directions. But I'm probably just gonna go with my best player available and the best player on the Swish consensus board. Come on, Malawash, Duke center. The Nets need stars in any form. Doesn't really matter what it is. They have very few long-term pieces locked up. Like even a guy like Claxton, who I had been high on for a long time, has been like pretty horrific this season. And who knows if they're going to retain him. One of the most important things when you're building a team from scratch, right, is to get that defensive anchor in the middle, these like modern mobile bigs. And while Malawash isn't as mobile as, your Evan Mobley's or Alex Sars or Jaren Jackson or Wemby or whoever, he's bigger than a lot of those guys. He is like gigantic, super nimble, and has just this incredible touch as a play finisher. So Malawash, I think, is a guy who has real weaknesses. Like he's not a great passer. I wish he was a little more explosive vertically, protecting the rim at times, but I'm really willing to bet on players like him who have incredible movement skills, incredible touch around the basket, and he's just improved a lot over the last year. Like he is so much better than he was Basketball Africa League and even early season Duke. Like I think he looks a lot more comfortable on both sides of the floor. So definitely an upside swing pick here, but I think that's what Brooklyn needs to be doing. There's a couple other upside swings on the board, but yeah, I think Malawash is a solid option here. But Derek, where are you at on Malawash in Brooklyn in general?
Yeah, honestly, with his combination of tools and just the statistics he's put up with Duke, I'm under the impression he's kind of a high floor pick. Like I just don't see too many outcomes where he's like completely inept. Like he's gonna find the floor with size. As we've seen, the finishing is there enough that they can at least put him in certain actions or hang him around the rim.
He's shooting 84% at the rim.
I mean, well, yeah,
It's
that's
ridiculous.
unbelievable. And then
Ridiculous.
also the touch that you touched on there, it extends to the perimeter too. I mean, obviously around the rim, he's phenomenal, but he's got the kind of like the early makings of these shots. He did it with the previous team. So I like Malawach a lot. I think a lot of people probably underrate him in terms of what he can be. He's
I think so too.
very much not a finished product. So for a team like Brooklyn who needs anything, like I like this swing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Malawak, I can definitely imagine worlds where just he's kind of lost defensively, and that kind of hurts his utility. But hard to see him not at least being a valuable play finisher with how good he is. And like you said, I think there's real upside on offense given the skill he's shown in past settings that he doesn't necessarily ever need to do at Duke because he has a bunch of great players around it.
Mhm.
But anyways, on to Toronto at 6. This is your pick, Derek. Another, I think these are all interesting. I'm going to say this to everyone, but Toronto at 6, you're on the clock.
Yeah, the Toronto rebuild, I guess, in general, has just been interesting. I'm kind of shocked. I guess it's due to injury at the record they have and the fact that they can get the 6th overall pick or even higher potentially. But I'm gonna go Edgecombe. I feel like he's BPA for me at this point. He's been really turning up lately. I think he offers an immediate infusion of defense just with the defensive playmaking. He gets after it on that end. He's got a lot of skill. And then offensively, the shot's starting to come around. I think the athleticism kind of gives him a high floor on that end. And then in Toronto specifically, I mean, they have a funky, weird roster. They mix things up a lot. I think he fits into that style. But then if he ever does develop into what some people think he can, which is maybe a lead guard or maybe the playing off of a lead guard, I think that's interesting too. So a little bit of I think high floor defensively, but high ceiling offensively pick here for the Raptors.
Yeah, I like it. Edgecombe is up there of my best prospects available as well. And it just makes sense for a team like Toronto that is, like you said, is kind of a weird team, but they have a good history of developing these really toolsy, athletic wing types. And I do think, I don't know if I'm as high as Edgecombe, like on Edgecombe's ceiling as some, because I do think just like the handle and the creation is really limiting. But
Mm-hmm.
a guy with his kind of athletic tools, I trust him to figure out the defense. I really do believe in the shooting. Like his indicators are great. He's been excellent in conference play. Really good shooter off the catch. Like can hop into shots versus over contests, off movement. Not really a pull up shooter, but like like you said, as a secondary guy, playing off of Scotty Barnes, and playing off of RJ Barrett or Quickly or Grady Dick or whoever wants the ball in his hands. I don't think VJ is a guy who like needs a lot of reps and a lot of on ball usage to add a lot of value. I think that's definitely good for Toronto. Where I think Toronto could still probably use like a real lead guard initiator, but it's also hard to find those guys outside of the top 5. And I think Edgecombe is as good of a bet for like a, really excellent complementary guard slash wing. And hey, who knows? Guys with his, like, he is a truly special athlete.
Mhm.
And guys with that level of athleticism, there's a chance things go really right and he ends up as a star in his own way. But yeah, big fan of this pick overall.
Portland up next. I've done a few mocks at this point. There's no winning with Portland. Like, no matter who I pick,
hate this one.
It's like you pick a guard and the fans are in the comments like, oh, well, you just don't believe in Scoot and Shaden and all these people. And then you pick a big and it's like, well, they'd never do that. That's not high ceiling enough. There's no winning with this team ever.
There is genuinely nobody I like for Portland. Honestly, like Ace and Edgecombe are probably two of my favorite guys just because they're like wingy. But
yeah.
And I don't really think this is a great wing class. Obviously, Cooper and Ace are incredible, but outside of those guys, there aren't a ton of like pure wings who I'm particularly high on.
Yeah.
Oh, I really don't like this one. I think I'm gonna give them a guy who I really believe in as an off-ball player in Trey Johnson. I don't love it. I don't have Trey is not the best player available on the board to me. That would be Derek Queen for me, but I just don't like that fit. Really, given how much they're investing in Klingon, which I think they should. I think Klingon's great. But Trey, I'm not a huge believer in as like a lead guard creator, but that's fine in Portland. They have Scoot, who's really turning it around, and I still believe in. I'm a big Shaden Sharp fan. I think you want the ball in his hands. And you're eventually going to have to move on from, I don't know, Simons or Jeremy Grant. Like the Blazers are just kind of a mess with the way they construct their team and their rebuild. I think they're pretty good at like drafting and identifying talent, but I don't particularly like what they do with that. But Trey to me is like a guy who doesn't like, you don't have to do a ton of work to get him to be productive. He's going to get buckets. He's a great secondary scorer. Like if you need him to, which, we see him do at Texas, he can create a little bit, but I think he's going to be at his best as a movement shooter, as a secondary creator, playing off of Scoot and Shaden. And, he's a pretty good passer in terms of like vision and skill, even though he's not the most willing or best decision maker. And he's not an incredible defensive player, but the Blazers have, I think, a really impressive defensive core. But yeah, I'm not like so stoked about this. I think there's a lot of prospects I really like around this range of the draft. I just don't really like any of them for Portland.
Yeah, Portland's tough. I personally am on record. I love Trey Johnson. I love his game. He probably would have been BPA for me here. The reason I like this a lot is because Portland hasn't really done this where they've taken a player who is kind of pigeonholed to a role like you talked about. Like he's going to be an off-ball scorer. Like they're not going to give him the ball out the gate, especially with the players that they already have on roster.
Right.
So I like his fit next to Scoot, next to Simons, next to Sharp, next to these guys that can have the ball in their hands and give him this role of, hey, here's what you do, like get better in the next few years with that. And I think he really can. I think he's going to be a really impactful scorer overall. I think the lack of stats in terms of like defense, rebounding, passing are a little like, they're not as concerning to me as most people think. Like, I don't think they're that bad, especially when you put it in terms of this guy's a true freshman leading Texas, an SEC team in scoring. Like, I think he's that talented offensively. I think he's fine enough everywhere else. So I like the pick. I like Trey Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think his ceiling is super high, but I feel really confident in what he is going to be as a scorer. Like I wouldn't build Trey as like a multiple time All NBA guy or anything, but I think he can be a really good player with, some all-star level outcomes at his highest end just because of the natural scoring talent. But anyways, let's move on to your Oklahoma City Thunder, who I just absolutely absurd that they have a top 10 pick at the moment. But I think there's so many cool directions that we could go here. So floor is yours.
Yeah, I feel this added pressure now that it's OKC. We've got tons of good options on the board. I mean, CMB, obviously, I feel like a lot of people kind of have them pegged as this. Like he's a little bit like J. Will plus in that regard. Like he's that good as a playmaker, defensive guy. Derek Queen, super interesting just because I really like Derek Queen. I think his future in the NBA is probably tied to a 7-foot rim protecting big, which Oklahoma City has. And then you've got all these swing picks, Esenge, Saraf, Traore even. I mean, you talk
So
about
many,
AJ Mitchell was good this year. Like if you hit on Traore and develop him, like what does that become in this secondary Thunder unit?
so
So
many options.
I think I'm gonna go with God, this is so tough. I'm gonna go with Colin Murray Boyles. I just
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
fit too much.
that's also who I would have gone with.
He's too perfect at so many things, and this Thunder team has done such a good job of blending people in so quickly that I think for all the talk about whether Murray Boyles has like a future in the NBA and all this stuff of like what he can be, I think the Thunder probably give him the maximum of that out the gate. So I love CMB. I think he fits in well. I'm gonna go him. I just think it's a good pick.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think he can approximate a lot of the good things that Hartenstein has brought. Obviously, a very different player, but
Mm-hmm.
just really stabilizing the backline defensively, being a good, dribble handoff initiator, passer. He's got the great floater touch. They happen to both be lefties, but I think there's some latent upside with CMB, right? Just because of his age and his production and the kind of scorer he can be. And I think OKC is a really good environment for him, which I think that this is true for most prospects, but I definitely think Colin Murray Boyles, his success is definitely going to depend on the team he goes to. I think OKC is a team where, you don't have to rush him in. But I could also see him being really productive as a rookie. And even though they have Chet and they have iHeart locked up for a while, like I really like the idea of just building up front court depth and front court depth contingency plans because, iHeart's not going to be on the team forever. I mean, who knows what they want to do in 3 years when his contract is up. And I think just getting contingency plans for what has been a weakness for the team is really smart. So I think CMB is the right pick here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even this season, like knock on wood that these guys don't get hurt again, but Hartenstein hasn't been available the whole season.
Right.
Chet obviously played 10 games and is now projected to play after the All-Star break. So Murray Boyles would have supplemented a lot of the I'm a J. Will fan, but he would have supplemented a lot of those minutes just in terms of he's so much more versatile defensively. He might even have a little bit higher upside with the ball in hands. Like
Oh, yeah.
he's got more dribble drive stuff. So
I think so.
I like CMB a lot in this situation.
Cool. CMB, OKC. Hopefully the OKC fans watching this are happy with that. I'm very happy with it. I like it a lot. Chicago, there's like an obvious like fan service pick, and I just kind of want to make it for the bit, and that's Jeremiah Fears, because why not because they're just going to draft the Illinois guy if they can, so might as well get ahead of it. But I do really like this actually. Aside from the Karnasovis drafting Illinois guys things, Madas last year, they're probably not going to be good enough to get the other Lithuanian from Illinois in this draft. The Bulls, I think, are similar to Brooklyn, honestly, to where they just need stars in any form. And I think Fears has real star lead guard upside. There's certainly issues and things that need to be worked out. The turnovers, some of his decision making definitely needs to become a more consistent off dribble shooter. But you just don't find guys as young as him. He's like a similar mold to Cooper Flagg, right? Where he reclassed and is one of the younger guys in this class now. Just gets to the rim whenever he wants. Excellent passer and like an efficient, high usage scorer on an SEC team. Like you said for Trey Johnson, I think Fears is doing a similar thing, just in a very different way. And like the Bulls probably aren't going to keep Zach LaVine around forever. Who knows where Lonzo Ball is going to end up? Even Kobe White, who knows? So I'm not penciling in anybody on this Bulls team as like a guaranteed long-term core piece that would get in Fears' way. And like I said, I can definitely see worlds where Fears isn't a great player. The shooting never comes around. Maybe he's limited as a decision maker, but talk about a guy who has real lead guard upside. I don't think those are super common outside of like the top 5, but I think Fears is one of those guys, and Chicago really needs one of those guys. So this is just like a pick I think makes too much sense in too many ways.
Yeah, I fully agree. This is the pick I made in my last mock draft. I think it makes too much sense. Like you said, I mean, they need anything and everything. Why not swing for the fences here with Fears?
Exactly.
Obviously, there's the flaws. There's the 3.5 plus turnovers per game. There's the shooting that's not great, but that's also a testament to just how good he is with the ball in hand, like finishing around the rim, the pure playmaking at times. Like he's a stud when he's on. So if that ever turns into consistency down the line, I think the Bulls will probably nab.
I mean, he's like a 32 usage guy who is efficient and assists more than he turns the ball over. Like, there are a lot of real issues with Fears, but like from a macro sense, his ability to, be a productive lead guard for an SEC team throughout the season, like against good opponents, definitely has fallen off a little in SEC play, but they played high major teams like early in, and he thrived against Arizona and Providence and like Georgia Tech. So yeah, I think this just makes a lot of sense as an upside swing where, the Bulls could go for a safer guy like a Sorber or I don't know, a Jace Richardson, but I just don't think that's a good decision for them.
Yeah, no, I like the swing for the fences here. San Antonio's interesting now because you also have San Antonio.
Yeah, it's a little gamesmanship here, maybe. No.
I was gonna say either that or we got to be like somewhat on the same page of like who's getting what.
I think we'll be on the same page.
I touched on Derek Queen earlier. I said I think his value in the NBA is tied to a rim protecting 5. They have what is going to be the best one of all time. You've also got these French swing picks that are always fun in San Antonio.
We're fully typecasting in the end.
I'm gonna go Asa Newell. I think
interesting.
I think it's a decent fit just in terms of I think Asa provides a pretty high floor in terms of everything he's done so far with Georgia. I think defensively he's good. He's going to be able to rack it up on that end. He can guard up, guard down a little. I think he's got some decent movement. He's scoring wise, decent on the interior. I think the shooting numbers are coming around. And then I think he's got a little higher upside than people think in putting the ball on the floor a little bit. I think that's nice next to Wemby as a true 4. I think we talk a lot about Wemby sizing up. I mean, they essentially play him on the wing. He's a 4, he's a 5. I think this allows Wemby to truly get all that he can out of that 5 spot.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as high on Newell as some people. I do worry about like, what he does on the perimeter because I don't think he's like a 5 on defense, but I also think that San Antonio is like the perfect spot for these like tweener bigs, where I think it should be a priority for the Spurs to improve their big depth. Like, no disrespect to Charles Bassey and Zach Collins, who, I think Bassey's been fine this year, but got to get Wemby some help on the interior. And I think just the nature of Wembanyama means you can pretty much find any big to really play with him and to be good with Wemby. So yeah, I like this a lot. Even if I'm not as high on Newell as a prospect, I think this makes a lot of sense for San Antonio, just given that, the Wemby kind of trump card allows San Antonio to decision make in ways that I think most teams probably can't and shouldn't. Yeah. It's like having like Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It's like you can kind of get away with shit if you have those guys.
For sure.
So now we have another. So you kind of screwed my plan up because I was going to take Queen here,
okay,
but now I'm not going to do that. As cool as I think that would be, I'm not going to do another shaky shooting big. Like you said, a bunch of French upside swings. Who even knows what's going to be happening with the Spurs if like it seems like they might trade for De'Aaron Fox or who knows, which of their prospects are still going to be on the board. Derek Queen is my BPA. Not going to take him. I'll take my next best available in LeBaron Philon from Alabama, who I just really believe in as like an on and off ball player, which I think fits really well with Wemby and what the Spurs want to do, especially if they're trading for a star. Maybe a little overlap with Castle, but one, I'm not the hugest Castle guy, and it really seems like he might be involved in a trade here soon. So who knows if that's even going to be a relevant consideration in, a week or whenever, or who knows what's going to go on with the Spurs in the next 6 months or whatever. But Philon, I just think has a really rare blend of traits that I value. He's incredibly quick, so good at getting to the rim, and he's an incredibly good passer, processes the floor really well on and off the ball, can make a lot of high-level pick-and-roll reads. I think his defense for a freshman guard on a usually defense-questionable Alabama team has been quite impressive. Like, his lack of strength really shows up, especially against screens. But, he's a teenage guard, and I think a lot of those guys struggle with strength. But I think Philon has, this, if he can really improve his shot, which I believe in this shot, which is partly why I'm high on him. He was a pretty good shooter in high school, and I think the volume is good. His touch is really good. Just mechanical tweaks are definitely going to be needed. But I think if he can get that shot right, he's going to be a really dynamic player, and he already is an excellent off-ball player with tons of experience playing next to other really good players at Alabama and at his stops in high school. So I think just another guy who you can like really. I love the idea of just adding as many like high IQ, high field players as you can next to Wemby, just to get the most out of that. So yeah, Phylon I think is the pick here. But interesting double up for the Spurs here. It's kind of fun. It's always funny to me that they have back-to-back picks, or could at least.
Yeah, I would have highly considered Phylon in Sacramento. I think he's that impactful. I mean, you talk about a guy who probably shouldn't be thriving the way he is in college basketball right now, but he's doing that on a really, really talented Alabama team
Yeah.
that, I mean, guards have a hard time assimilating there a lot of the time. So he's been phenomenal. I too trust the shooting there. I think he's a pretty talented guy. I like the Phylon pick. Now with Sacramento, I mean, like, how do I
kind of similar to San Antonio. Who the hell knows what their roster is going to look like in a week, let alone next June?
With that being the case, do I just pick who I think is a good basketball player despite them not fitting great? Or because like Derek Queen, we should have drafted long ago. I feel like it stinks that he slipped this far, but also in terms of Sacramento, does he fit? Not really.
Definitely not.
So, this is tough.
This is a tough one. I absolutely agree. This is a tough one.
I might go Isenge here. Just because if we truly don't know what this roster is going to be, why not swing for the fences here with a prospect? I mean, he's moldable in a lot of senses. Like he's pretty similar to some draft prospects of years past where we have no idea if he's going to be a good basketball player or not. I think he's shown enough right now that he's worth a lotto swing. I think the size is really interesting, defensively versatile. Finishing is solid. I don't know. I think Isenge is a fine swing here for Sacramento.
This is a weird spot. I agree. I'm not as high on Isenge. I worry quite a bit about his offensive fit in the league, but this is another one kind of like Asa, where I think the fit does make a lot of sense. Isenge is the youngest player in the draft, I believe. I think he's a little bit younger than Cooper, and has been productive in the German league, which is always a good sign. I think Sacramento's biggest need, and I don't really see a way that they fix this, is the wing forward defender type, right? They don't need more offensive players. Like they have a bunch of really good offensive players. And yeah, who knows like what the direction of the Kings is going to look like. So I definitely don't hate this as a hedge, right? Like you get another really big young player who can defend the perimeter, has shown a little bit of interior defense, but the thing with me for Isenge always is just like his mobility at that size, guarding the perimeter, switching out, changing directions is pretty absurd. And I think that's really like almost to a T what the Kings really need. I mean, the Kings to me, like their best thing would be a real like rim protecting four, but those guys are rare. And I don't think there's like a real good one of those on the board at the moment. But yeah, I think this is a super weird, tough spot. You know, if we recorded this a week later, who knows what this looks like. Anything else on this one, Derek?
I don't think so. I'm not in love with it, but I mean, it's what I got to work with right now. Like you said, if a trade had happened tomorrow and we recorded this the day after, I think I'd feel differently. I would have loved Phylon in this scenario, but
yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
You snagged him. That's the rules of the road here.
So I'm ending the Derek Queen slide for
Perfect.
Golden State at 13. I think this one makes sense just like with their ethos. I think he fits perfectly into like he's not Draymond, but OKC runs a lot of offense to their bigs. They rely on bigs who can pass and dribble. And they also really need stars. Like this is not a two timelines decision to me. This is a like this Steph era is over. Not that Steph isn't good anymore, but like the Warriors just don't have a championship level roster anymore. So I think they should be looking to the future where obviously I think Steph can be a good player for, however long he wants to play. I think his game is going to age really well. Like he's still a good player, but Queen to me has some of the highest upside in this draft of any player, even if there are a lot of flaws. And he's a guy who like, I've come around on a lot because I do think just valuing strength is so important. Like, yes, Queen is like a shorter center who's not a great outside shooter and not a good rim protector. Like normally bad. That's exactly how I felt about Şengün that's probably how I would have felt about a Jokic type. I'm not saying he's going to be like these players. Even a Sabonis, we've seen like non-rim protecting centers in the right situations can become valuable defenders. Like I think a guy like Queen, more than a lot of prospect, requires like a very intentional team build and just, a lot of thought with the way that you develop him. But there's aren't a lot of 6'9" freshmen with his level of advantage creation and the playmaking ability that he has and the touch. And I think he's legitimately a good perimeter defender. Like the effort and the interior defense are rough, but like he is super mobile and can switch out. So I think just like I have Queen in my top 5. Like the fact that he fell this far makes it tough for me to pass on him, even if I didn't like the fit. But I just happen to enjoy the Golden State fit as well. So yeah, we've kind of been alluding to this one happening for a little bit now.
Yeah, no, I like this fit a lot. I think that's probably the perfect landing spot for him. And I mean, even what happened right here, like we both like Queen a lot, but there's just not a ton of places that like make sense for him, just in terms of like some of these
Right.
teams are good. Like
Like
a lot of he
it's
doesn't
tough.
fit immediately into a lot of these. So I
Right. Like
love this.
OKC, like I said, I think OKC could work. I think Chicago, I considered for Chicago, but like,
Mhm.
San Antonio, if they take a big no, Sacramento, probably not, Portland, probably not, Toronto, maybe. But yeah, I think this is, that regardless of fit at this point, the value was too much for me to pass. But I know you're a Queen fan as well, relative to the spot too. But
Yeah. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like you said, obviously we want Steph to thrive for the next decade, but Queen is kind of a nice mix of, yeah, he can help immediately, probably in a few ways, but he's also got this really, really high upside. So big Derek Queen fan, and I think that pick's great.
cool. Last pick of the video, Derek. You have Houston, maybe a budding rival of your Thunder. So who are we giving the Rockets here? This is an interesting spot. I think there's a couple ways that you could go here that I'd like quite a bit, but
Yeah, this one's tough. Just, I mean, Houston's like season has really changed what I've thought about their construction just in general. I mean, they've been really good. I feel like they need probably a rim protecting 5, but I'm not seeing too many options here. So I'm gonna go. This is gonna hurt because I don't necessarily want to. I'm gonna go Con Knipple. I want to add
fair.
shooting to this team in general.
Yeah.
He adds that. He adds a little bit of like playmaking. Obviously, at the NBA level, maybe we never see that, but Duke thrust him into that role early in the season, and he was okay handling the rock. I think that would work out somewhat well in Houston. They've got a lot of different ball handlers, stuff like that too. So I like Knipple here. I don't necessarily love him as a prospect, but I think this fits probably a little bit too much to pass up on.
Yeah, I like it. I don't think there's a super easy, clean one here. Like I like Sorber there. I think that's reasonable, but like you might want to swing a little bigger if you're
Yeah,
the Rockets. Like I think Jace is interesting. So the main thing to me that the Rockets need to address here is their half court offense. Like that's the one big concern that's, if they lose or get held up in the playoffs, it'll probably be because of their half court offense.
Mhm.
And I think drafting a guy like Knipple, as you said, incredible shooter off the ball. I really believe in his passing even at the NBA level. Like I think
Yeah,
he's a really really awesome passer. And Knipple's main weaknesses, right? His athletic tools, his scoring at the rim, some of his defensive stuff. Like the Rockets are maybe the best team in the league to cover for all of those
right.
weaknesses. Like they have defense and rebounding and interior scoring in bunches. Like they don't need more of that. So I think Knipple is one of the better half court offensive guys left on the board. Like I think Richardson, Saraf would have been interesting. Even like Cam Jones
Mhm.
could probably be productive for them today. Like if you could give me the choice of Aaron Holiday or right now Cam Jones in the Rockets rotation, I'd probably take Cam Jones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the Knipple pick. I think I generally like the value. This is the range that I have him in, like late lottery, mid first round. But this is our lottery mock draft. I am pretty happy with how this turned out. Quite a few, challenging selections. But that's part of the fun here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've got some really talented guys that weren't drafted. I think it
Yes.
speaks a little bit to the middling depth here. I mean, you got Sorber, who I like. Saraf is interesting. Traore obviously hasn't had a phenomenal season, but he was one of the guys in this class coming into the year. Still probably has that potential. Rasheer Fleming. We didn't touch Demin, didn't even talk about Demin. So
Nope.
yeah, I mean, there's some good guys still here, and I feel pretty solid about what we actually did too.
Same. I feel good as well. Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much like trying to think who are my high. I love Miles Bird as well. I think he's been insane for San Diego State. I gave him to OKC in one of my recent mocks, not at the eighth pick, but what's their second pick? Is that like Miami's or LA's or who's?
Both, probably the worst of those two. So
Yeah,
right now, I think Miami.
whatever their like middle first round pick was, I gave
Yeah.
them Miles Bird. But yeah, awesome. I think they're again like a lot of really good talent that we didn't even touch on because there's just a lot of really good prospects in this draft. I think compared to a class even like 2026 where there's going to be like 3 or 4 like generational prospects, I think the depth of this class in terms of like even beyond the lottery is pretty stellar. And that totally showed up. But anyways, Derek, thank you so much for joining me. Anything you'd like to plug that you're working on? Floor is yours. Say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, so we've got writing going up at Thunder on SI, at NBA Draft on SI, and then I do the YouTube stuff over at Derek-Parker. I have a mock over there that I dropped on Monday. It's not completely dissimilar to this one, so yeah, go check that one out.
Yeah, like I said before, you're going to want to check out Derek's stuff if you enjoy my stuff. And yeah, let's go see how his mock draft compares to the one we did. Derek and I talk. We have some similar opinions, but obviously some differing ones, as we saw in this mock draft. But I'll link all of his stuff below. And as always, would highly appreciate like, subscribe, comments. Stuff really helps the YouTube algorithm. But anyways, thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.